Hello viewers, good afternoon. Welcome to this episode of the Youth Roundtable. Well, just last month, Parliament did legislate and eventually passed the Computer Misuse Act 2022 as amended. This particular bill was eventually assented to by the President, and now what that means is that it became law and that, it is in full force as we speak right now. But also we know that in the couple of weeks past, we have seen Ugandans being repatriated back home. Basically, these were laborers who had gone to the Gulf countries, that is Oman, Jordan, UAE, among others. They're being repatriated back home, and for reasons that we have seen and very disturbing, incidents there. Well, this afternoon we convened to discuss the conversation on those two fronts. What does the Computer Misuse Act mean for example, freedom of speech? We know that Article 29 provides for freedom of speech. So that and much more on this episode of the Youth Roundtable. I'm joined by a panel of distinguished young people, 3 gentlemen and a single lady that is now my honor to introduce to you, and in no particular order. The Speaker of Kawempe Division, a member of the National Unity Platform and a law student at Makerere University, joining us at least, I think, for the second time in a period of less than 2 months, Mr. Right Honorable Harris Akampurira.
Yes.
Many thanks for joining us, sir. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me.
You want to say hello to our viewers?
Yes, indeed. Hello to our viewers. It's a pleasure once again to be back. Today we are discussing very important topics that touch our Ugandan society, and I am proud to be invited to participate in this conversation.
Well, thank you very much, Harris. A former Guild presidential candidate at Makerere University Business School, but also I know that he comes from a youth advocate from Namisindwa district, but also an NRM disciple, Mr. Nimrod kakayi. Many thanks for joining us this afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Kidega. It's always a pleasure being part of the Youth Roundtable, and it's much important today that I'm part of this conversation that will shape our society when it comes to the cyber space and our labor export. It's very good to be part of this panel.
Thank you very much for sparing the time. The third gentleman is Mr. Masawi Ivan, who is a Mechatronics and Biomedical Engineering student at Kyambogo University. I also know that he's a former Guild presidential candidate in the same. Ivan, many thanks for sparing the time to be here.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm really grateful to make it for my first time on this show. I want to thank the management of Civic Space TV and the moderator for giving me such an opportunity to be a member and be part of contributing to the Youth Roundtable when it comes to such discussions where youth as the majority stakeholders of the country, we should dissect and have an input. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Ivan. Then the last panelist on the show and the only lady this afternoon is Mrs. Pimer Peace Monica, founder and executive director of Nile Girls Forum. Pimer, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on the show. And it's always great to be with young people deliberating on issues that not only involve we as young people, but also how we get meaningfully engaged on such discussions. So it's really an honor to be on this panel today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, guys. Harris, let me just begin with you. For obvious reasons, you're the law student on this panel, and we're discussing legislation. We're discussing a law that is now in force, that was assented to by the president. What are the contexts of this law? To the viewer who has no idea about what the Computer Misuse Act has amended entails, what new provisions have been introduced, but also what is the law in general, in the broader sense? Just kick us off.
Thank you very much once again. Maybe I should start by the history of the Act itself, the Computer Misuse Act, which was first enacted in 2011. And the background, it was first introduced as a bill in 2008 by the Uganda Law Commission, Law Review Commission. And the intention was that at the time, the intention, broadly speaking, was that we're entering a new age of digital communication, digital transaction, everything being revolutionized. It was migration from analog to digital.
Yeah.
And that's a world that we are living in now. So at the time, there was no legislation at all that was supposed to, regulate things like data, personal data, things like computer systems, things like economic transactions that were done online. So it was, at the time, it was very important. But at the same time, there was a group of people who were interested in curtailing, in making sure that they regulate conversations, that then thought about, making sure that the online environment is convenient, is safe for everyone. To that extent, it was good. We all want to participate in a civic environment, be it physical environment, be it digital environment. We want a safe environment. We want everyone to be protected on the digital environment. So then it was enacted in 2011, but with two provisions which were very problematic. And those provisions were Section 24 and Sections 25. They contained ambiguous languages that would give the law enforcement a lot of discretion in as far as those provisions allowed these law enforcement agencies to pick and choose who they target for application of the law. Specifically, Section 24 provides for it uses languages such as lewd, such as abuse, such as language that is broad and seeks to promote what they call computer misuse. But then, what is computer misuse? And then Section 25 goes ahead to say, if anyone uses the computer or the digital environment to disturb the peace, and disturbing the peace is not defined. So then immediately after the enactment of this act, we've seen a number of people, a number of citizens being victims of this act, basically because of these broad sections. Key among them was Stella Nyanzi. Dr. Stella Nyanzi, she was arrested and then in Zira for about 18 months. The offense that she had disturbed the peace of the president, that she had insulted the president. But we come later to that, but between you and me, we know that these were trumped up charges. She was purely targeted. We know that really, once you ascend to big political offices, then you should develop a thick skin for higher levels of scrutiny. Once you're president of the country, then you have allowed yourself to be scrutinized up to your buttocks. They're saying that the higher the monkey climbs, the more it exposes its buttocks. And so is the nature of politics. Other people who have been, targeted using the act, our comrade, Kakwenza, you saw how he was brutalized. His back was peeled as if they were peeling matoke. When you look at his legs, the entire body, it's a shame. The crime that he has abused the president and his son. So you can see that now the law being now moved towards moving away from protection of economic and other communication rights on the digital platforms to curtailing freedoms of expression. And there are so many young people, specifically in the national unity platform. When you look at people who are being accused, who are being targeted by this law, it is people who are critical of the regime. We have a young people, John, he spent in the detention 30 days, that's 1 month, without being, arraigned before court. His crime that he had disturbed the peace of the speaker. We have Motive Kasiriv, who was also detained and tortured and crowbarred and done all his main acts. His crime, speaking up, expressing his opinion. So the danger of this act is that now we see increasingly being used being used as a tool for witch hunting, for targeting those who are critical of the regime. And
okay, fast forward to the amendment.
Yeah. Then
what new provisions are being introduced?
when you look at the intention and the spirit of the amendment of 2022, sponsored by Honorable Lisereko of Kampala Central, I think the people are very mad at him, his constituents. I think he will not come back because I don't think what he brought to represent the spirit of the people that he represents. The spirit, as he says, is that social media has not been regulated. And I think this is a personal issue to him because there have been pictures of him depicting him as a pig. With due respect, I've not shared those pictures. Others depicting him as, you know, those funny images. But like I've said, we should develop a thick skin once we aspire into public offices to put up with such. So, according to him, he says social media has not been regulated. So the amendment was specifically targeting establishing offenses against certain conduct using social media. And social media, they're looking at platforms like YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok, QQ, mention it. There are several of them.
Fair enough, fair enough. I think the background is quite elaborate. Nimrod, let me just come to you.
Yes,
Hearing Ndugu Harris express his views, you know, he broadly explains the mischief behind this particular legislation, that there are certain aspects that were introduced to curtail freedom of speech. You are a young person in the NRM. The NRM boasts of having majority in parliament. So what this means is that any law passed in parliament must be supported by the NRM.
Yes.
I don't know. Are his allegations in this case right? Because he says that the likes of Stella Nyanzi, Kakweza have been targeted because of this particular law.
Thank you, comrade. You see, I don't want to laugh on such a show, but I've been keenly listening to comrade.
Are his concerns laughable?
There are few that are laughable. I will just express what I think. He has given a very serious background of this law of 2011. I've read that document. I've read the amendments. He has given allegations of targeted, you know, the law targeting few people. He has given two scenarios only of Kakwenza and Stella Nyanzi. And I was having a debate with friends that mention 10, they cannot mention them. But okay, we cannot ignore that.
Oh, really?
Let me give you.
Oh, really? I mentioned only two?
1 second.
Let me give you what I think. In a world whereby technology has taken over, they were saying that when you want to destroy a society, actually, are these laws. In a country like Uganda, whereby technology, we have embraced technology and we're moving very fast like this, the regulation of our cyberspace is very key. Now, let me tell you why. Today, around, according to the police, around 1,000 cases in 2021 were reported as cyber harassment cases. So many of our sisters, so many of our friends are victims of cyber harassment. I don't want us to discuss this law in isolation. This law, you see, you have the right to express yourself, but you have also a right to protect someone else. This law is coming in and saying, if you go ahead and say, you found Kakayi Nimrod raping so and so, it's your right to tell so. But also it's my right to go to court and say, you abused and defamed me. It is also your right again to go to court and defend yourself. And this law, the amendments are actually clear, bring about deterrence of the issue. Because when you look at 2011, we make it clear that when you're convicted, the punishment is 200,000 shillings. You get? And now, Honorable Sereko is saying, can we increase on the punishment? We are saying, let it be at least 10 years of imprisonment and maybe 700,000. Maybe the law will make, because implementation of this law from 2011 has been very difficult. Someone will abuse you the way they want, they'll come on social media and speak all the information around you, and they say, if you're not taking me to court, I'll put you 200,000. It's as simple as that. But the way we're going together, for example, a child recorded in pornographical issues and shared on social media. This is a society matter. Let's not even discuss it in colors. Let's discuss it on the issue of our society. your sister, your brother, yourself, that a child reported at a very early age, put on social media there, and let me just finish, I will give you time. And they share, this is something psychological torture, that this child will grow up in such a sense of psychological torture. I think this law is in favor of protecting the society. If these comrades are sure they're doing good things, why are they worried of this? Because if the law is saying, until you're found guilty, there is no judge in good sense will convict you if you have not done something bad. And the law is saying, don't abuse, don't share information that is not right, don't share pornographic things that are from someone. Make sure that whatever you talk about, you have the truth. Yeah. And if you are sure that what you're saying is true, then why are you worried of this law? Yeah. So that's the whole point. The friends are worried in a sense because they know what they say. It's not true, but if you are right, then you should be the justice person.
Harris, I'll give you 1 second because
yes. I would like to respond to my evasive, my brother's evasive conversation.
No. Just keep that response for slightly later on. I think we shall have time for you to respond. Okay. But Pimer, let me just come to you. How did we get here? Whereby we have to curtail what comes out from someone's electronic device. I think it was Council Mpanga who said that we are a country that has lost its DNA, that we don't feel each other's pain anymore. Because ideally, why should you come on social media to insult me, to insult my children? I have a family. Exactly. I have parents. So why should you come on social media and then spread falsehoods, trying to defame me? So do you think that the mischief behind the Computer Misuse Act, the mischief that we must be a society of decorum, that we must respect each other, that before you come out to put information against me, are you sure it is actually right? So do you think the mischief behind this law is a genuine mischief? Or you want to agree with Harris to say that there are certain provisions that were put there to target individuals? Or you agree with Nimrod who is saying that, no, the law is actually okay. If you know that what you're doing is not right, then why should you be afraid? So what's your own opinion?
Okay, thank you so much. In my opinion, the Computer Misuse Act, it has been a very controversial law that everyone has a different perspective on. But one thing I would say that as much as there are those provisions that, are definitely in favor of all, there are those that also are a little bit not so clear. Because I would just bring it into perspective in a way that, like years ago, social media was not really something that has blown out of proportion like it is now. And so you'd find that there is lots of hate speech going on. And in the space of, it is my device. It is, I have the freedom of expression, But sometimes you find that people tend to misuse that. So yes, so I would say that it's also really very important to put that regulation into space, because you'd find that in a space where there is no law governing, so there is really no control of what is put out there. But there was one thing that really raised my attention, I picked so much interest in. There is a part where it talks about minors and what sort of before you put out information or an image involving a minor, it should at least be with the consent of a parent or a guardian. But then when I read through that, I remembered just a recent scenario where there was a 22-year-old mother beating up her child, I think, in a homestead. Yes. So in that case where you find it's actually the parent that is doing this. And I remember it was a very controversial debate where people went on social media to say that why would someone be recording this instead of reporting it to the police? But we've also seen how social media has helped very many people get justice at the end of the day. So for a minor like that, that is where it becomes very ambiguous, because you're saying they need that consent from a parent. So what happens when the parent is the perpetrator actually doing that? It doesn't come out so clearly,
I think that's where exceptions might come in.
Yeah, the exception is clear on that, is that when you do it in good faith, when you record a video in good faith of the society and you report it, and they convict the mother, you are not convicted. So it is the law is clear. The amendments are clear that record the video if it's protecting the minor from danger, and you have done it in good faith. You don't need to seek the consent of the parent.
Yes, just in addition, the other thing is that sometimes even when it's in good faith, when people record minors, you know, it is very important at least to cover the face, you know. But you'd find that most times people do these recordings and they're like exposing exactly how the minor looks like and all that. So for me, that is one thing that I pick on. But I think also in a way, it is a very good law, because if it is protecting me from hate speech that has been there for a very long time, so I think it's also important for us to first look at us ourselves in the shoes of, you know, what is happening in our communities, instead of us, let me say, looking out to the other person. Just put yourself in the situation, because we have also seen very many nudes of young women put out there just for the sake of, you know, she shared it, you know. Sharing it with you does not mean that you should put it out there for the public. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it also helps, as much as there are those sections that are not clear, but generally it is a very good law, because for a very long time, people are getting too used to the fact that social media is a free space. I can say anything, I can get away with it. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Monica. Ivan, let me just come to you. We are in an era of liberal democracies, that people should be able to express themselves, liberal views, right? But also, the fact is that Uganda is a multi-nation state. There are many nations within the same state, right? But also, we embraced multi-party democracy as a country. That means that we shall have different ideological orientations, which have been accepted by law. So, but is the mere fact that we are different in terms of political ideology, in terms of ethnic background, is that a guarantee for us to express ourselves in a non-derogative manner, that I can get on social media and insult the president? Because Harris is saying that the likes of Stella Nyanzi have been victims of this law. But Dr. Stella Nyanzi went onto social media and described someone's private part. All right? You know, Kakwenza went on media and used some form of description that I'm sure if it were used against Harris or any of us here, we would not be very happy. So where is your own position in this law? Is it doing good or it is taking us backwards?
Yeah, thank you very much, moderator. As a country, I've looked at my brothers try to respond to the Computer Misuse Act. But this conversation in this country is not helpful at all, because you first look at government's investment to the computer use, to the ICT itself, because we want to accept. I happen to have been in Germany around May of this year on a training, and while in Germany, some of our students had protested the high increase in prices and were arrested. And then a friend phoned me watching a video of fellow students who had been arrested while protesting high increase in commodities, and asked, but this kind of violence is not shared on media channels here in Germany. How comes in Uganda you're sharing? The reason here in Uganda people have misused the computer, whether they use it well or they misuse it, the results are the same. These are individuals, if they write on internet today their grievances, they want to be responded. If they wake up and move maybe to parliament, still they will either be abducted while they have been abducted via online, or they will be abducted physically. So it comes back to government investment, that you will not prioritize much framing laws that protect you as a government, but when you don't invest much in building a culture on use of computers. Coming back to your question of different political ideologies, even apart from that, Uganda is treated to a lot of covenants. The National Covenant on Political and Civil Rights, African Charter of Civil and Political Rights, which all curtail freedoms of expressions and use of information. Article 41 of the Constitution is really very clear on freedoms of use of information. And then we come to the law itself. The framers of the law of Computer Misuse Act 2011, I think so, were honest enough in the objective, in the remedies they sat down and put to paper back then. They were very honest, and in any country where ICT had become basic, where the world was leading in a trend where emerging technologies of use of computers had rose, it was necessary to have a law in place. But it was also necessary for the government to invest in education on the use of communication because some of these countries like Kenya are teaching computer and other related use of. In Uganda here, an average Ugandan holds a computer at the age of 18, 20. This is a human being who is frustrated, most likely is unemployed, he can't afford the cost of living, and it is a gadget in wrong arms in most, because the person alone is curtailed in a certain corridor that he will get a lot of idle time to use it. But then I now come to respond to your question of different ideologies. As a country, there is no smartphone made for NRM, made for NOP. There is no smartphone made for a strong FDC or what. I don't believe. As Ugandans, I don't believe there is also a site where there is only NRM, maybe if a WhatsApp group. But use of technology is made on standards of applying to everyone. Yeah. But where we get issues as Ugandans is the law is applied on standards on that are double standard. You find a baby general today post on diplomatic terms with Kenya, I can crash you in 2 weeks. Then if someone else had certain opinion with Computer Misuse Act 2011 in action, that person will be treated the Kakwenza style. Then if this one from this side has an opinion, on several, you find the legal rep also bring his defense, you find the Honorable Sereko also bring his defense. So we wanted, I think the law where it gets challenges is implementation. To what standard? Do you apply the law? You don't apply the law in isolation of color. You don't apply the law in isolation of ideology. Anything in the hands of Ugandans should be equal. If you're a general representing the Uganda People's Defense Forces and you tweet a tweet that affects the diplomatic terms of Ugandans, you have affected all Ugandans. I don't think all Kenyans will be happy with a Ugandan in Kenya if they hear such a statement undermining their security. If you're a Ugandan, for example, Masawi Ivan, and you tweet ill about Kakayi Nimrod, in the sense that you're also aware and guilty that you're using it offensively against him, the law should apply to you equally. The same applies to a person on the other side. But where we have always got issues is that these laws have not been brought in good faith, because with the rising emerging technologies, there are a lot of parts in clauses where the Honorable Sereko would have put a lot of efforts. That would be cyber crime. That would be maybe sharing intimate. We have seen nudes, girls cry. My nudes have been posted. What? But when he came to, most of his intentions were political. Because we have always seen in this country, whenever we are heading to elections, Facebook is either switched off, social media is switched off. So where does the law act if we still have such practices? We have seen a lot of duplication in the law itself. The data protection is almost all duplicated in the very thing. Interception of the Communication Act is still duplicated in the very thing. Most of the clauses come as duplicate, but his major aim, I want to believe, the remedy that the Honorable Sereko was seeking, I think to the people of Kampala Central, he was just seeking a high punishment for those who have been violating the existing law. But he was not providing any time of remedy, maybe in terms of standards or the emerging technologies, because technology has improved over the last 11 years. 10 years, I think, since 2011. He would have addressed the key challenges that are rising with rising technologies. He would have the key challenges that constitutionally have been a block, because we have seen constitutional challenges with this act before when it comes to interpretation of section 24 and then section 25 on offensive communication. The Honorable Sereko was supposed to clearly with Parliament and the Committee of Magogo of ICT to clearly define how best could we define it legally in the legal perspective to make the section 24 of cybercrime very clear, section 25 of offensive communication very clear, so that it eases the interpretation of...
Good case. Yes. Good submission right there. Harris, let me just come to you. Let's explore the sufficiency or insufficiency therein of the existing laws. Because I want to believe that by the time a law is legislated and passed into law, it is filling certain gaps. But as you've heard Ivan saying that there are already existing laws, the Data Privacy and Protection Act of 2019, the Penal Code Act itself criminalizes defamation. Okay, so are the laws insufficient that would warrant us to have a new law coming into place or amendments of the existing law? Are there insufficiencies? But also you had concerns to respond to from Nimrod's earlier submission.
Exactly. I mean, what you raise is part of the issues that point to the fact that this law was not brought in good spirit. Because if you look at slander, if you look at defamation, which Mr. Sereko and the team are talking about, it is sufficiently covered in our laws, in our penal code. I mean, and the case law is also clear. If you defame, there are certain ingredients which, when proved, you can successfully recover against the offender. So there is no clear innovation. There is no clear, clear mischief that can clearly be pointed at that the law has introduced, especially the amendment of 2022 of social media. I mean, this is a space for communication. This is a vehicle for communication. What is communicated on social media is not a problem of social media per se. It's a problem of society. And increasingly, as a society, the challenge we have is trying to seek legal remedies to political problems. Trying to think that law as a device can solve all our society challenges. If we have moral decadence, it does not necessarily mean that the solution is the law. And I can assure you that the law will fail. Because if people's grievances are rooted somewhere else, so if you suppress their expression of those problems, does the suppression actually take away the fact that by and large, the body politic is disgruntled? No, it doesn't. So the problem is trying to weaponize the law. And once we weaponize the law, the consequences are even far-reaching. That people, over time, are going to disrespect the law. Because the law must serve a higher purpose. It must not be used as a raw tool, just like you use the gun. They must serve a legitimate purpose. And that legitimate purpose, if you continuously use the law for objectives that are not legitimate, then it is going to lose its force, its moral force, its authority. And that's dangerous. Because it will draw us further to chaos. It will take us back. Because if, like my brother has ably said, you are applying the law unequally. Some you say, okay, you're a little general, you please tweet as you want. To Kakwenza, you say, no, you're not allowed to do this. That's double standard. That's problematic. But without losing the focus of this conversation, and this rotates to what my brother, the revolutionary in NRM, has said. I was earlier saying that he's misplaced. If you dress like a revolutionary, you belong to the NUP. Or the yeah, but to respond to what he has said. You see, my brother, our disagreement with the law is not against protection of the children's rights. We want our children to be safe and protected. Like she has described it. We agree. We condemn hate speech. We condemn hate speech. We condemn sexual harassment. And when you look at the law, the vulnerable groups like women who have reported now and again that they have been harassed. The law is not designed in a way to protect them against harassment online. When you look at groups that actually need protection online, the law, the design, the architecture of the law is not in such a way as to protect them. But rather the law is designed in a way to make sure that if I disagree with you, my brother, that there are certain words I cannot use against you, even when these words are constitutionally protected. Let us be guided and be reminded that in the landmark case of Charles Onyango Bo and another versus the Attorney General, the Supreme Court was very clear that what Article 29 protects, Article 29 of our Constitution, and our Constitution is the guide, is the supreme guide, nothing above it. What Article 29 protects, and this is what the Constitutional Court says, is that kind of speech that is unpopular, that is most likely to offend, that is most likely to be unwelcome, and is most likely to be critical of the powers that be. Because why would speech, which is generally agreeable, be protected anyway? Because if we agree on a consensus, then no threat. But the design, the spirit behind Article 29 is that that speech that is likely to be critical, that is likely to antagonize, should be protected. And Article 43 goes further and says, any right that is protected by the Constitution, if it must be limited, just like the Computer Misuse Act is seeking to limit an expressly provided right of freedom of expression, the purpose must be very clear, and it must be geared towards protection of the national security, the national morals, and the public health. And in order to do that, for an object for any limitation to qualify as being in furtherance of those three goals, national security, public health, and morals, it must be framed in a very specific and certain language. When we go to Section 24 that I've talked about, Section 25 of the Computer Misuse Act, and now the amendment itself, it is couched in a very ambiguous, very vague, very wide-catching net. The intention, and this brings us to a very firm conclusion, that the intention of the legislators, and you can see even the process was not followed when you look at the minority report. Some of the provisions by Honorable Sereko were not even debated at the committee level. They were just illegally introduced because they are in bad spirit. But in conclusion on that point, there are certain internationally accepted standards, because we live in a global village now. And regulation of computer and digital spaces follows certain standards. And just immediately before the assent by the president, the United Nations Commission on Human Rights wrote a report and said the bill would backtrack, would take us aback in as far as furtherance of the freedom of expression is concerned. They went further and said that the bill should follow established international standards in as far as regulation of computer use data protection is concerned.
Thank you. Well, just to take it slightly out of context, I have observations for the international community at a personal level, but perhaps maybe not for every reason. Depending on the context, I most times have a caveat towards what they recommend or guide on. Nimrod, let me just come to you, and I'll just pick out one statement that Harris made, that we are looking for legal solutions to political problems.
Thank you.
You are a political player.
Yes.
Do you think there are underlying political problems that are leading the NUP youth to become very abusive on social media, that are leading people to become very angry on social media? Are there certain underlying political questions that must be addressed first, morally?
Thank you,
or politically?
Thank you. Now, I want to state it categorically that I condemn torture, I condemn the use of law unequally. But before I answer your question, in America, hate speech costed hit and around 200 people died on streets. And in America, you cannot upload on Facebook a video of a minor with their face. You must cover it before you upload it. The moment you upload it with it, they will definitely pull it down. It is because that end of the day, this minor at a certain point will access this information. If the mother tortured that minor, still that is the mother.
But none of the NUP activists who have been arrested are involved in minor cases.
Harris,
was not a case of a minor.
Yeah. I'm giving a principal answer.
Yeah.
So it is clear that they are protecting their society. As much as they are helping the minor, but also the minor should still be protected, and even the mother who tortured this minor. Because at the end of the day, to remain that mother in the future. In Rwanda, our just neighbor here, the genocide was a result of a radio talk show. Just a radio talk show speaking about the Tutsi and the Hutu. And no one paid attention to it. And the result we have today, our friends of million died. Yes, there are other issues that caused the genocide. But surely it is because of hate speech in the society. When you go to China, the second largest economy in this world, some of these social medias are not there. They're not there. Getting back to your question, is this law answering the political ideologies or protecting our political ideologies? My brother and my brothers here, if we all believe that we are Ugandans, and this is our space, the world is developing at a very fast rate. And the global village is getting everywhere. Hate speech is condemned globally. Globally, in UN is condemned globally. It's not a Ugandan issue. Answering this question that where is the amendment protecting the women? Where is this amendment protecting the minors? It is clear here in Article 23. Section 23, I mean. Here. The Honorable Muhammad made it clear that don't share information that will ridicule me, will defame me, will reduce me. Don't share information that will divide me. Don't talk about me based on my tribe, based on my religion, based on my color. And what we are saying is, if you know that whatever you are saying is okay, if you believe that whatever you are telling us is okay, why are you scared of this law? And to make it more clear, there are so many avenues you can express yourself with respect. Even on social media, I don't think there's anyone, if there's anyone who will tell us that there's anyone, maybe from National Unity Platform, as you claim, that has been arrested for speaking about high prices on social media.
Yeah, but
there's no one. And because they're expressing their views.
Moderator,
let me conclude. Let me conclude. So
just
it is
clear.
We shouldn't let a colleague pass with.
Because he allowed you to make your point.
I have never interjected you, and I believe that should be the debate. You allow me finish, and you also
whether you agree or disagree.
Exactly, and I see disagreements are very good. You know that the first revolution of fire was a disagreement between stones and rocks.
No, moderator,
so it is clear that we can always disagree, and that's very important for our society.
Yes.
And I want to make it clear to our friends that protecting our society, protecting our children, protecting me and you, I come from mobs. I want to make it clear. So many girls I share with stories of psychological torture. They're in love with someone, they shared maybe their private videos with them. At the end of the day, that person, maybe because of a disagreement at a certain stage, has released them on media.
But moves also does it.
I want us to discuss in the context of moves, but this is a society. I'm just giving a personal example here. So they shared something, and this girl can even not attend the university again because of fear, because of shame. They have ridiculed them.
Harris,
they have reduced
just
to conclude,
just put it there, Harris. 1 minute.
We also have,
you had a concern.
We also have.
Yes.
We'll get his time.
No. Harris, just 1 minute. I know why.
Moderator, my concern is, my colleague is discussing points where we agree, and in a way he's trying to, make parliament as moral judges, moving away from constitutionally protected rights. And to that extent, we disagree. We think that whatever legislation must be passed by parliament, it must be in agreement with the true spirit and letter of the constitution. And actually, for your information, because many Ugandans disagree with NRM majoritarian parliament, and because they have also misused that majoritarian numbers to pass draconian laws, many Ugandans have petitioned the Constitutional Court.
Okay, fair enough.
So,
make your point.
Yes. So to conclude,
Ivan, I am the moderator.
To conclude,
Yes,
it is very important
Yes.
that for us to interpret this law with an open mind. Our friends are claiming that the law was brought in bad spirit to go against them politically and all that. I want to ask them, if we are giving example of Stella Nyanzi or our brother Kakwenza, these are people who go on media and declare someone dead. Someone is alive. I mean, someone is alive. The other day, you saw someone saying that Major Salim Saleh is dead. The following day, we saw Major Salim Saleh giving a speech and laughing.
Major or General?
It means General Salim Saleh. Yeah. So, I mean, how funny are they to go ahead
Good question.
declare someone dead?
Good question.
Imagine your father, imagine yourself declared dead by someone just because of social media likes and maybe views.
Good question.
It's fun.
Thank you, Nimrod. Monica, let me come to you. I mean, just hearing this debate and just seated aside and just hearing these gentlemen exchange their views, is it an indictment on our criminal justice system? Because I think that the concerns being raised could be on areas of enforcement. That will the enforcing authority actually be able to interpret the law in a genuine manner? Because you know that the criminal justice system has factors around investigation, trial, I mean, all that is our criminal justice system. Because what this law is proposing are actually offenses. It is creating offenses, which is actually criminal offenses, not civil. So do you think that our criminal justice system has capacity to interpret this law in a genuine manner? That even if it is ambiguous on paper, that our judges will say, no, this law was actually brought up in bad faith, like we have seen them doing before. We saw them reverse the 2000 Referendum Act because it was passed in a process that was not, procedurally right. So we have seen courts take a position and say, no, this law is unconstitutional. We have seen them throw out certain provisions of the Public Order Management Act. So what is your own view? Do you think that our criminal justice system has capacity to enforce this law without being partisan and without, being ambiguous?
Okay, thank you very much. One thing I've noticed about Ugandan laws is that in most cases they are beautiful laws. But then when it comes to implementation, it becomes an issue because one, you cannot implement something very well without understanding what it actually is. But also before the judges go on to actually use these laws in order for people to get justice, are the typical Ugandan, an ordinary Ugandan, for example, from Zombo, do they even understand what this law entails? That is the first thing. Because we can debate all we want about the Computer Misuse Act, but does a local, a border man actually know? Because recently I was on a border and in most cases, border men are very well informed with current affairs. And then he was asking me a question of, so does the Computer Misuse Act also mean my small phone? Does it actually affect also this small gadget I'm holding? Because I mean, it is computer. So for an ordinary Ugandan, they're probably thinking it is that desktop. Yeah. So I think the first thing, even before that implementation is made, we still have a lot to do with making an ordinary Ugandan, a young person, actually understand. But also on the issues of being non-partisan, very many cases we have actually seen laws being discriminatory because you'd see there's lots of discrimination when it comes to implementing these. And some of them really, it's not really like rocket science, These are things you actually see happen in communities. Because today I would commit an offense, but I mean because Peace is the executive director of Nile Girls Forum, she will find her way. I would just make a phone call to one of you on the panel. You'll be like, okay, so this has happened. We have seen these like really go down the drain, even very genuine cases that are being put into court. So I think also for these laws to be implemented well, one, capacity needs to be built, not just for the judges and the lawyers and whoever is going to be holding this document. But for me, my worry is for that ordinary Ugandan who actually has no idea that right now there is something called the Computer Misuse Act. But one thing is that about this act, I would also concur with my brothers over here that, you know, for a very long time, with these elections happening, you see social media being shut down and all these things. Really, in this law, I wanted to see more and directly, like, where we put young women, because we have talked about the issues of nudity and what. So when you just say that if you do something that offenses me, it really is not so clear. We wanted to see these things being listed out directly. If it is about putting out a nudity, let it speak it to the way it is. If it's about, let me say, hate speech that I posted because I know the Baganda looked at in this way, let it be so direct. So for me, one thing is that everyone needs to actually know what this law is. But also, one thing is that even when these provisions were coming into place, I just wanted to find out, were there consultations really being made and who were part of those consultations? Because at the end of the day, that's why issues come around and start saying, we are not seeing this part coming out clearly. So what was the guiding document in order for us to actually have this part? Yeah.
Wow, good question. Ivan, as we take a short commercial break, let me just come to you. And I'll pick it just from where Monica stopped. The process through which this law was made. We know that Article 79 gives Parliament the powers to make laws, all right? But also to make laws and amend laws where there need be. And the law is a living document that should be able to resonate and adjust with the ever-changing societies. Do you think, in your own words, this particular law is as a result of the ever-changing society, as a result of the ever-changing social fabric of Uganda as a country? In other words, does it speak to the wananchi, to the ordinary Ugandan that Monica is trying to emphasize? Is it their law? Can you say this is our law, the ordinary Ugandan? That I'm there in Parabet and I would have an issue with someone insulting me. Is this their law?
Yes, thank you very much, moderator. I've taken a long time listening to my brothers argue about something that doesn't come out clearly. And I've spent a lot of energy about it. The governance of this country in the last 3 years has led us to degenerate this conversation to the way we have handled it. Because governance includes communication, is why you see there is a full Ministry of Information, Communication and Technology. Communication also has feedback. Whatever we are discussing, the misuse of the Computer Misuse Act is about the feedback government gets from the people it is managing, from the people who are facilitating. Because even the law is being facilitated by the very people who are being managed by the government. So it has a mandate to fulfill on behalf of Ugandans when it comes to communication. So let's come back to Computer Misuse Act. She has put it very clearly, the channels, because we can now put aside the issues that may arise, because basically these were all guild president aspirants. He was a candidate under primaries in North Makerere. He was a Mob's flag bearer. I was one also at Kyambogo. Let's be very clear. We know politics. We have seen ever since the enactment of Computer Misuse Act 2011, whenever the implementation was struggling, they would look for other remedies like OTT, like recent elections, switching off some media houses, ghetto media. When civil society intervenes, you suspend some. This is politics. we can want to pretend to look the elite. We have gone to school. We know the law. Is a law student. Yeah, it is necessary for a country to have a Computer Misuse Act in place, basing on the emerging technologies and advancement of the world. It is a necessity. It is also, I happened to, during the National Communication Conference in Makerere, to have a one-on-one with the Nyombi Tembo, is a former Minister of ICT, and is a leader now, I think, at Uganda Communications Forum. And he was very clear that today ICT is a necessity, is a basic. A computer being in the hand of someone is a basic. And it is also a basic to have such laws in place. But when the politics overrides the intentions
just on the politics, Professor Oloko Nyango, who is a constitutional lawyer, wrote a very interesting book, and this book is titled When Courts Do Politics. And his argument was that we should not invite the courts to do politics. Just to pause you right there, do you think that this particular law is inviting courts to do politics?
Our preamble is very clear. Even when there was no computers, abductions were there. People used to be abducted. Now people are using the computers. The very people I saw some, he was very clear about motive, Kasagan group. The reasons they were abducted was because they misused. But is that the legal remedy that has been put into place for someone who has misused the computer? The enforcement and implementation. Is it the one drafted in Parliament, broad daylight? Also the legal process that Muhammad Nsereko and the chairperson of ICT, I think, is Moses Magogo at Parliament. They follow in drafting a law, the consultation, coming up to the level of, because being a private member's bill, I know how Muhammad Nsereko has a lot to market and to prove to Ugandans that is right. And to some extent in his bill, we are not saying it is all wrong. Even where he's doing a duplication, it is something that has to be reviewed with the past advancement that has occurred in the ICT sector, in the computer sector. There should be an advancement in the policy as well. Which is good in when we come to a patriotic Ugandan and to any law citizen. But the procedure of handling it, first sensitization, first consultations, like my sisters put it clear, but basically also shielding it away from the politics.
Then, Ivan, you haven't answered my question.
Yes.
As we take a short commercial break, is this, because most of you have framed this law, at least the two of you, as a political law. So, in its political nature, is it inviting the court to do politics?
The Ugandan court has always done politics. Justice Kisache is here crying on the streets, on the streets, because her petition was not allowed to be read. Let's not pretend the current Chief Justice was an Anthony to the head of state. When you're in power, you have the leverage to appoint the Chief Justice. Let's not debate as if we are in a new Uganda. We landed from the moon yesterday night.
But do you also want to cite out the incident where the Honorable Bagalia won a petition against a cabinet minister? So why are you cherry picking? Why are you picking?
And it is also a political case. Yes. Winning does not take away. Whenever we discuss computer misuse, it doesn't take away that there are people misusing it, or there are those also using it right. This is why I told you in the first case there is what they call double standards in this country. This is what has degenerated our debate to this. That we know people like Nimrod can assault someone and he has somewhere where he can make a phone call because he's a NRM leaning you. He can be rescued, but Masawi will be abducted in Uganda and your parents from Bududa will cry the whole Kampala with no one coming to their rescue. This is why we have issues as Ugandans. We don't have any issue with the legal framework. We don't have any issue with any other person, but with the management. When you manage issues based on color, based on political affiliation, when Muhammad Nsereko goes for a law and then comes to say, I don't debate with such a person on legal issues, it shows the perspective on which where he was basing to put.
Just
And as a legislator, he'll be a
Yes,
legislator of all Ugandans.
Mm.
But when you see him with his arrogance, thinking that now because maybe he was lucky to return to parliament, he needs to be too much arrogant. We have seen a lot of arrogant people in this country, and it will change. It will change. These laws can be reviewed in one night, but the essence is what character and value do we sell as Uganda. Communication is a culture. Communication will not be framed in books. Other countries where communication has been improved, the governments have invested in education. We have a full Ministry of Communication, but what does it do? Only address press conferences on Wednesday. That is not communication. Government should receive, he's a leader. He should have structures of receiving feedback for what he's doing so that he can work better. But if you're a government not having structures of receiving feedback, then you want to use social media as your feedback, then you will be forced to abduct people. You will be forced to switch off the ghetto medias, the what? Because you will see them as a threat. Where are your structures as government towards responding to people who have grievances?
Good question.
Yes.
Well, Nimrod, just after the break, we shall wrap
just
this
something.
up.
Yeah, we shall wrap.
Yeah, we shall wrap up after the break. Okay. Well, viewers, thank you. We know that you are enjoying this conversation, but also importantly, you have an opinion. There's a comment section right below this video. Give us your comments. You have that freedom. Let us know if you agree or disagree with any of us. Please let us know in the comment section. But above all, just stay with us and see you shortly after this commercial break. Bye-bye.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Yes, we'll be back. Viewers, Nimrod, your hand was up and you are itching to say something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just to answer our friends here, you see, the bit of this country is that there are avenues to challenge this. This law is there, but it's also an avenue for our friends who think it is not good to go to the Constitutional Court and challenge this bill. But apart from that, to answer my sister piece here, that how are we going to make sure that, for example, Nimrod, who comes from Namisimba district, our people from there understand this? We cannot be ambassadors. And this is to my fellow penals here. I'm encouraging them that let's go back to where we come from, in the society we live in. If you are from Makere, if you are from, Zombo, be the ambassador of this law. To where you come from. Sensitize our people there that this law is good, not for anyone, not for the color of the politics, but it's
Nimrod,
for the beauty of our society.
Won't that be an indictment on the state? Because I think Article 3 of the Constitution places a responsibility on the state to sensitize and publicize and popularize laws. So if you're asking individual citizens to now do or perform the role of government,
but also the Constitution,
is that an indirect indictment?
The Constitution says that one of the responsibilities of a good citizen is to support the government in good activities of the government. If this law is coming for the good of the society, then it is our constitutional right
says
to go
support
ahead.
A good government.
Exactly, and this is a good government. That's what I remind. There's a good government. Yeah. So this is just to tell you that we cannot go ahead and be the ambassadors of this law, this bill, to our societies. That this law is coming to help every Ugandan who is out there, who is innocent about. Leave these politicians. There are these good Ugandans out there who want their space, who love their privacy, who don't want to come out and expose them. These are people we are saying, can we all be ambassadors of sensitizing the public that don't infringe on their privacy, don't go and defame them, But let's all embrace technology because we need it. I want to just remind you that in North Korea, that has a population of 53 million people, is making its GDP is at around 1.7 trillion, 1.5 trillion dollars. That when you combine 30 countries of Africa, we cannot hit that. Just 54. So it doesn't mean that we need to be many to ensure that these things happen. Few of us who believe that technology is good for the development of this country, we should go ahead and embrace it. Because at the end of the day, we cannot run away from technology, but making sure that the cyberspace is regulated. Today, the people who want the power will be in power and will face the same challenges. I want to encourage them that as much as we're trying so much to take over power, also ensure that the time you take over power, the space is regulated to also help you. So let's all be ambassadors of this act and ensure that every Ugandan is safe in the cyberspace. I thank you.
All right. Harris, let me come to you. The United Kingdom, in fact, has no written constitution.
Yes.
They're only governed by conventions, good practices. So that means that the solution to society's challenges might not exactly lie in framing a new law.
Yeah.
So, but also my question to you is that how difficult is it because NUP youth have been at the forefront, at least from what we see, at the forefront of insulting and of hate speech. They are so intolerant. That is a honest fact. Anyone who is on media can see that the most insulting group of Ugandans actually come from your political party. So how hard is it for you to express your views without exactly insulting me? How difficult is that? As a leader in the NUP, do you ever take time to sensitize your comrades and say that, guys, we can disagree with the NRM regime, but with decorum?
That is it.
How difficult is that?
Well, how difficult is it for the NRM regime to disagree with NUP without massacring hundreds of Ugandans on the streets of Kampala? How difficult is it for the NRM to organize free and fair elections according to the constitution through which Ugandans can express their views? You see, there's a saying, there's a proverb in our African culture that if you over squeeze this nose, it will breed. That if you lock a dog in a room and try to beat it around without a passage for its escape, this dog is going to bite you. What we are seeing, and when you do social stratification of our community, NUP represents a certain class of people who are voiceless. It represents a certain group of people who have been marginalized, segregated, and excluded from economic and political participation of this country for over 40 years now. And this is about 80 to 90% of this country. We can bet this, but this is statistically true. I can take you to the ghettos of Bwaise, I can take you to the ghettos of Kamwocha, I can take you to the ghettos of Machinde, and all the ghettos of Namisindwa, Barara, the ghettos of Varua, of Vulira. Everywhere you go in the ghettos, you'll find young people. You'll find a class of people who have been excluded. These comrades in the NRM, they like to talk about digits, GDP, sijui what. But this budget, these roads they are talking about, they are roads which are used by only 5% of the country. This GDP is owned by only 10% of the country. So now, after making us vagabonds, after making us outcasts, you even want us
to abuse us.
No, not even abuse us. By the way, that is also subjective. That is also subjective.
Misuse.
Because in your rhetoric, and you're good at that, I've not had you point out a private citizen who has complained of being abused online. It is very clear that this law is specifically designed to protect a small political class whose agenda is regime longevity. They have been so much in power that they are disconnected from society, and because they are disconnected from society, and because these society members are posting pictures of ugly slums that they don't like to see, because they are pointing ugly pictures of drainages, of garbage that goes uncollected for a month, the elite don't want to see these pictures. There are certain words that are common, because these words we are saying that we hate here on social media, they are not engineered by the boys at Kamwocha, as you like to call them. They are not engineered by NUP. They are part and parcel of our society. That is who we are as a people. So for the political elite of Uganda to say that they want to create their own world that is disconnected from the bigger Ugandan community is a facade. Like I said, social media is just a platform for communication. What is communicated there is a representation of what your society is. Let us also not forget what Professor von Savogin said, was a philosopher of law. He says the country's laws strengthen as a country, as a country strengthens. The country's laws also weaken as a country's economy, social fabric weakens. So for us to be looking for political solutions using legal means is an expression of failure of social construction, social engineering of our society. And that's why the NIM should focus, but they won't focus there.
Have you participated in this degeneration?
Participation in the degeneration, you see, sometimes society must sink deeper before it can rebuild.
So you're sinking us deeper?
No, not sinking us deeper. The NIM has sunk us deeper, and we are getting to that level where the suffering is going to become unsufferable. And once it has become unsufferable for the majority, then as a society, like what Council Panga made a very remarkable statement, that there is no country called Uganda until we start feeling each other's pain. You cannot tell me we are a society and then your NRM, Kakwenza is peeled, Masereka, skin, he's peeled, he's tortured. Recently we are burying Naduli's son. Wounds were very clear that he had been tortured. We have been seeing brutal murders, broad daylight murders on the streets of Kampala. And these murders, these tortures are targeting those critical of the regime. And then you keep quiet. Just one moment, just one moment. You keep quiet about
as
this.
Wrap it up.
Yes, as I wrap it up. You keep quiet about these gruesome tortures. And then, on another day, when people who are affected express their anger, you say we need to build a liberal and accommodative society. What kind of reasoning is that? I am being brutalized. Mothers are crying. We are going to talk about labor exploitation. Mothers are crying. People are desperate. And then we don't have time to say, wait a minute. We are NRM, but we are Ugandans first. Let us talk about non-negotiables, the national values of the country. But then, when a one Nsereko, just a small class of elite, are abused, and then we are all of a sudden concerned. So the abuse in Nsereko suffers on the social media is much graver than the loss of a parent who has lost a child on the streets.
Good question. No, you will answer later on. Monica, let me come to you. There is a principle of equity that says that he who comes for equity must come with clean hands. The NUP, in this case, and Harris makes the argument on this platform, says that the remedies being sought by NUP are for justice and equity. But do they have clean hands? They are the orchestrators, at least according to many people, of hate speech on social media. Do you think that even when they're coming before equity in this particular law, are they coming with clean hands?
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very good question. So when it comes to the issue of equity, one is that as much as there is National Unity Platform and there is NRM, one thing we should know is that whoever is under the National Unity Platform does not have the same intentions as another person. One could have clean, good intentions. The other has different intentions. The same applies to any other political party.
That's right.
So one thing is that even before this, let me say, one member in the National Unity Platform brings up an issue that needs to be worked on, for example, the first thing is that we should look at it with an open mind, not saying that now the NOOP are categorized as, you know, hooligans or whatever it is. One is that there are already two categories that we are looking at. But if we are to only dwell on the other side, that, you know, that still takes me back to the hate speech that is entailing that, you know, maybe the NRM are known for not doing things in this way, and the NOOP are also not known for doing things in a certain way. I think that's where the issue comes in the first place. So one, before you even say, generalize yourself as you, the NRM, are attacking us as NOOP. One is that, are you actually doing the right thing? So sometimes you may find even the people we are seeking justice for are actually people who are not even doing the right thing. So for me, one, we should leave politics out of it, one, in order for us to actually seek the justice. If we look at ourselves for who we are as peace, not as Nile Girls From, not as NOOP, not as whatever I affiliate myself to, then that is where we can come out to have that equity and fairness. Okay.
Wow, amazing. Ivan, let me come to you, and I'll just quote Karl Marx. Karl Marx, in his very famous articles, one time said that family is the fabric of any society. That family is where everything begins, be it economic empowerment, be it moral values, whatever it is. Family is the basic construct of any society. Do you think that some of these issues should actually be addressed at a social level? That families from the word go should train their children that, hey, young child, when you grow up, please, and you disagree with someone, do not actually use such kind of words. So do you think this goes back to other informal structures like family, like churches, like cultural institutions? Are we relegating their role in nurturing a society that respects one another? And we're focusing only, oh, parliament, go different us, and we're leaving there would be very crucial players who would have enabled us to address this issue from a structural level.
Yes, thank you, moderator. It is very clear that charity begins at home. While I was growing up, our home had the only walkway. Up there, we don't have roads, we have walkways. To the only public school and crossing the only bridge of River Manafa. It was entitled of us. Our parents had made us our personal to greet everyone passing on that walkway past your home. So values and morals, whatever the bill is looking up, these are things that are, I told you very clear in the beginning. It is a culture. Let's not confuse ourselves that someone will be taught us at 20 years, at 30 years, that abusing someone is bad. It is a culture. It also tells the degeneration of parents we are having, the degenerations of society we are having, and this comes back to government. These people have a bit reduced the debate to NOOP and NRM. When we are discussing an issue which matters on Ugandans, we don't need to reduce it to colors and political parties.
Exactly.
The NRM is 100% responsible for the germination of NOOP. Those boys on the streets, anyone giving NRM headache, it is 100% responsible for the headache it receives day and night. It is why it is 100% responsible for the punishments it is giving. When you are in power, you need to give account. And accountability communication is part. It is why in the beginning I told you there is a full ministry. And there is also a ministry for education. There is a ministry for gender. There is a ministry for ethics. All these things come towards what Honorable Nsereko was trying to put in the bill. Malicious information, communication, which is a culture that as a country, to our viewers, I would request, don't leave a lot of sensitive issues to the politicians. People want power. But the issue of communication is an issue that we should go back and review as Ugandans. That how best as parents are we doing to build our kids, to monitor their communication. As schools, because they should be the epicenters of good communication. We go to school and we all here on the panel have studied communication skills. How often do you apply them? Or you only apply them because you're in a campaign or you're addressing an NRM retreat or no retreat, you now need to come up and look so elite But when you are elsewhere, it is a game of how I communicate. So your question is key, but to me, I record this that accountability goes back to government. When he says it is a responsibility, that's how the NRM has maneuvered with its responsibility. It always thinks there is a good citizen who will go and do it, the work of the government. Honorable Sereko should have drafted a document of financial implication when he was raising this bill in Parliament. Wasn't he facilitated to go and do consultation? Wasn't the committee of ICT facilitated to go and do consultations? Did they move around districts, sit UCC, sit universities, sit cultural institutions and consult? Now, if you know always, this is why I told you that the best to be a better leader in this generation, you need to have a communication structure. This is why we have seen the introduction of OTT. This media thing looks to have been a headache to the current government because it is not easy, I believe, to have a structure of information that gives you leverage when it comes to management of affairs. But my request to the viewers is that issue of Computer Misuse Act, whether we violate or we match with the law that Honorable Muhammad Nsereko brought, let's look internally. I know most of Ugandans are attached to religions and culture. We had the culture here before the Europeans imposed all this we are discussing. It was just imposed on us, but we had morals. In Uganda here, it was known that greeting, abusing someone else is a bad vice. We still even have some of these cultural institutions existing. They should wake up and play their role. If Rumbuye is abusing people, the Rumbuye's parents should feel guilty about. But if Rumbuye is also using it for express what he has been reduced to, because when he made it very clear about locking a dog, when someone feels suppressed in this generation, the only media or only channel they will have is maybe going to media and think they will influence people of the same mindsets, people of the same category to rise up in such a nature. Is why I have told you clearly, the NRM is accountable for the computer misuse and lack of computer use when it comes to the education.
Thank you. Colleagues, let's just wrap this particular debate. And Nimrod, I'll just pick your last words. But perhaps my last question to you as you give us your last words is that there is the deep pocket theory that he who has leverage should extend the olive branch. The concerns being raised here, some are in fact legitimate. Do you think that as a young person who belongs to the ruling political party, would you encourage the powers that there be to extend an olive branch and say, here we have gone wrong and we acknowledge and promise to do better?
Thank you.
Is it easy or difficult to do?
Thank you. Just the late Lord Justice Mulenga, in his ruling around 2001, in the issues of hate speech, he made a statement that protection is the most relevant thing to do in such a space, because it's very difficult to determine what is false and what's wrong. He made it clear that in such space, for him, he will believe that it's right to abuse me, that I'm in Masawi, who is not circumcised. I'll feel offended. But also it will be very hard for me to bring it out, how true it is or wrong it is. To my brothers and, first to my government. I speak that to my government. It is very important for us in government as well to increase and sensitize the public about technology. And I would appeal to the Minister of National Guidance, that let's invest more in ICT. In Kenya today, they start teaching ICT at P1. They give tablets to pupils at P1. Today in Uganda, we know that it is at a different level. For us to develop and also handle issues of unemployment, we should invest in ICT and educate our children from the first stage of life about technology so that they become good cybersecurity people, good animators, and make the use of this technology
Okay,
space.
your last comment about this law.
Now, I also agree that maybe the consultation process may not have been so wide enough for everyone to recognize it. And I believe that it is okay that moving forward, maybe in terms of implementing, let's take it back to the people, let's sensitize everyone in this country, and let's love our society. And as a government, let's ensure that this law is sensitized and make sure that everyone in this country knows about it for our good society.
Thank you. Yes, Ivan, your last words, but also what is good for the goose is good for the gander. This law, is it good for everyone?
Yeah.
Your last comments.
As a person who is so passionate about technology and in engineering perspective, who would want to see Uganda embrace more technology, basically in line with ICT, since it is a hub for development, it brings a lot when it comes to the economic perspective and job creation. My last perspective would be in say that to the enforcers. First, I don't know, there are people who have gone to challenge it in court. I wish them well. To the enforcers and the DPP and the police, we want to believe this generation is very educated compared to other generations that were accused of not having enough education. Let's not see the very habits of double standards when it comes to implementations of these laws, because even as it is still in court, it applies today. If you violate and you're caught, you may be taken, but we are requesting that let's be mature as Ugandans. We may have played politics for years, but even Bibles, many things in the Bible ended at 40 years. A lot. The journeys, always ended at 40 years. So let's be mature for once, that because this is a culture, I'm told that there is no one going to teach you the right communication. We may be here pretending you just live here. Even communication should be a responsibility to a parent, should be a responsibility to a leader. To go back in Kawempe and tell people to communicate well should be a responsibility to him. But as a government who is held accountable, how are you helping him to always put things, to always respond, to have structures that respond to the grievances of these people, so that there is less on his side towards implementing better communication? Because this is a response you get. Whatever abuse people get in this country is what they have worked for, their accountability, a response. We are the ones who create the hatred, and we are the ones who spread.
We should deal with it. Okay, thank you. Harris, the law is in force. Your last words regarding the law.
Well, the law is in force, that is true, but I mean, some of the great philosophers that we respect so much, like St. Thomas Aquinas, have postulated that unjust law is no law at all. And the same would apply to those like the appetite policy in South Africa, discriminatory laws. So if any law is not grounded in morals, is not grounded in logic, does not serve a higher purpose, law that is intended to achieve an illegitimate political object, such law should be disrespected. And as time passes by, such laws will suffer the inevitable fate, death. That law, in as far as it is designed to curtail the freedoms of expression, I can guarantee you, as day follows night, that is going to be reviewed. Of course, I am quite aware that most of our justice system is filled with cadre judges. The Computer Misuse Act itself was challenged in the Constitutional Court since 2018. We are still yet to receive the verdict, and that shows you how down the pile we've gone, because the Constitution is very clear. Constitutional cases are supposed to be expedited, but 4 years down the road, the case has not been disposed of. And as part of the design of the NRM, do unfair legislation in Parliament because you control the majority. And then, of course, the natural trend is you would send us to court. Then in court, the case will drag there and it will eventually die. But that has far-reaching consequences, which is the death of institutions. That's why Parliament ranks among the least respected institutions in the country. And unfortunately, even our judicial system is going there. So my parting shots on this topic is that for as long as certain fundamentally guaranteed freedoms, inherent freedoms, inalienable rights, which are not given by any government, but are granted by God, for as long as these rights are being trampled on for political reasons, illegitimate political reasons, I can assure you the human spirit will always be out there designing new tools of fighting. And I can assure you in the NUP and the greater Ugandan society is going to find ways of how to make sure that they defeat this draconian law. And defeat the draconian law we are going to. I thank you very much.
I hope you don't plan to use extra constitutional
No,
methods.
we are guided by the
defeating this law.
Constitution, especially Article 3.
Good. Article 3.
Yeah, but the Constitution also allows peaceful demonstration.
Yeah.
Yes, so
That is provided for by extra constitutional.
No. What I should state categorically clear is that as a National Unity Platform, we believe in constitutional means of expressing
grievances.
our grievances.
Amazing. Monica, you have the last words on the show. Perhaps you would want to make reference to what Harris was trying to say, that the American Declaration of Freedom, the opening words were, all man is born equal.
Yes.
So does this law offer an equal platform for all Ugandans, as you conclude?
Thank you. The law, in my opinion, especially when it comes to the implementation, that's where I'd have a worry. Right now, the law looks like it has equal provisions. But then when it comes to the implementation, that is where I worry. But just in my parting shots, one thing is that we should know that this law is for all Ugandans. It is not a law for NRM, it's not a law for NUP, it's not a law for FDC or any other political party. So it is also very important for us to interest ourselves in it. Because right now, there is still provision for you to advocate. There's still an opportunity for you to advocate for what sections you feel like are not inclusive enough. So I really believe that, one, if we're to interest ourselves, then also read further in this document to be able to understand. And it is only then that is when we can actually go, when we are much more informed, to pass out this information and also see whether adjustments can be made. But also, it's very important for us just on this panel to actually practice what you preach, because it would really be unfortunate if we are here discussing the Computer Misuse Act and the second day we are caught on the other side of the law. So I really call upon every person out there, and especially young people, not to believe that, you know, when an act is, when a law is passed, it's not only for the lawyers out there, because you'd find there are very many people who are hearing Computer Misuse Act, but they're like, no, those are things for lawyers. You're talking about act sections. So let us interest ourselves, and it is only then that we can actually be on those decision-making tables. It's only when we have been consulted that we can actually contribute meaningfully.
Wow, thank you. Well, as it stands, the law is in force, and we wait for what the Constitutional Court will say, and if challenged, the Supreme Court will, of course, give the sui generis decision. Well, Nimrod, just let's advance to phase 2. There was a report that said that over 14,000 Ugandans leave annually to go and work in the Gulf countries to find work and employment elsewhere in the Middle East. Is this an indictment on the regime that has failed to deal with the issue of unemployment within the country? That there are limited opportunities, and you've been able to preside over a country with limited opportunities, and therefore every year 14,000 Ugandans leave the country.
Thank you.
and go into harm's way to find employment.
Thank you so much, moderator. I will start with facts from the Ministry of Gender and Labour. There are around 100,000 Ugandans in UAE. But what is surprising that around 75,000 Ugandans in UAE live there illegally. Only 25,000 Ugandans have gone there legally. When you ask me the question of, has the government failed so that these people, 40,000 are going there every year? Today in Uganda, we have Americans who are working here. We have Indians who are working here. We have so many other foreigners in this country working. Does that mean that those countries have failed? No. It means that there is an opportunity here that they have come to take use of it. This is the same to us. That if there is an opportunity in UAE for our people to go and get some employment, what's the problem with that? The labor externalization is not only in Uganda. We also know that Pakistan, actually before in Iraq and Pakistan, during 1960, they started this thing of labor externalization, and actually over 60,000 Ugandans went there to go work. But the question we should all answer is, what's happening now? The repatriation of Ugandans, the deportation of Ugandans, and is it okay for Ugandans to go there? Bring this to a perspective. The fact is we have 75 Ugandans living there illegally, meaning these people are not captured in the government. One, they're not giving back to the government. It's very hard for government to help them. The issue of our friends who are crying of torture and harassment in these Arab countries, it's clear that when you intercept most of them, you realize that they went there using porous borders. I'll give you a fact. I come from Namisindwa. In our district, we have a border called Wahaha. So many of my cousins and friends have gone through Kenya to Arab countries. And they have gone there illegally through the porouses. They have not used
Nimrod, irrespective of how they live, the fact is they are living.
Yes.
So you see, they say that by the time a rat is running, there's a cat chasing it from behind. So what is chasing these Ugandans to even force them to use porous borders, like you've said, to leave the country and go and find opportunities elsewhere?
Now, what is chasing these Ugandans? There's an opportunity in UAE. That's what is chasing them. They have realized that there is market, there is work, there are jobs in UAE, in Arab countries.
Which are not here.
Which may not be here. And the opportunity is there. Yes. And they are trying to go there to find jobs. Now, I would want us to discuss what are the facts of these jobs, what is happening there, and what maybe government can do better, or what's the government doing?
Good question. Good question. And well, fair enough. Harris, let me just come to you. These Ugandans who are working in the Gulf countries, the issues that they are raising might not exactly be Ugandan government issues. Because the human rights abuses are not happening in Uganda, they're happening in those countries. So perhaps maybe you could tell us the bilateral agreements. Are they catering for the rights of these migrant workers? But above all, where is the lacuna? Because it is you who emphasize that we are now a global village. So perhaps there would be no issue with me going to work in Oman because we are one people, we are all humanity after all. So the issue of human rights, the issue of the bilateral agreements, is there a lacuna? But also, does that vindicate the government of Uganda? And to say that perhaps it could not be their problem exactly.
Any government worthy of its name has a duty and responsibility to protect the rights of its citizens, wherever they be. And that duty and responsibility extends to immigrant workers. My brother has spoken passionately, trying to defend an indefensible act, a glaring failure by the government of Uganda in as far as hundreds of Ugandans are leaving to the Gulf countries. The pictures that we have all seen of these people are appalling, and we should all be concerned. But let's go to the crux of the matter. You talked about other countries using, being involved in labor externalization. You spoke of Americans coming here, spoke of Canadians, British coming here. Have you ever seen a British being made here? Have you gone to Senegal and you found there a Canadian sweeping and looking after children? What we are sending there are not actually skilled laborers. We are sending there mere bodies. These are part of one of the most shameful statistics of our country. What is that statistic? That over 15 million Ugandans between the age of 14 and 25 are neither in education, nor in employment, training, or any kind of job. There are people who are just there, they're forgotten. These are kids who have dropped out of school. These are children from the vulnerable backgrounds, 14 million of them. And when you look at those pictures or plethora of Ugandans living, you can hardly find any graduate. Majority of them are not educated. There is no skill. So what exactly are you exporting? What kind of labor are you exporting? You're merely exporting people to be for organ extraction, because we have cases of organ extraction. We are just participating in human trafficking. What we are participating in is modern day slavery. Let's call it what it is. It is modern day slavery. And that's a vindication of what my brother has said, a glaring failure of the government of Museveni. The government has failed. That by the pictures are shared, the NUP, I thank the leadership of His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi and the Secretary General Council David Rubongwa. He's a graduate from Harvard, by the way. You guys like to call us hooligans. But with their incredible leadership and our members of parliament, the entire NUP party leadership has so far repatriated over 153 Ugandans who have been in horrible conditions. Most of them spend 3 to 8 months in detention.
Just told that.
Most of these guys, the pictures that we are receiving, Ugandans are on the streets. They're like street children here.
We want to give me information.
No, hold up. Just
so, to come to your question of the bilateral agreement, these agreements are also not shared. And the people involved, it is the companies, because the companies which are involved in this labor exportation, who are taking a lot of money, because before you leave, you pay a certain amount of money, in millions, to these companies, and they also receive money from the receiving companies.
Which companies are licensed by government?
Which companies are licensed by government? But these companies, government want to do the right thing because, on the one hand, the affected are sons and daughters of the no one. It is your brothers and sisters from Namisindra, my brothers and sisters from Kabamushwerenche, who have been long excluded from this country. So the elite, the ruling class, doesn't care about them. But two, they are using them as trade objects because they are gaining a lot of money. Those companies, export companies, some of them have been indicted, but have they been closed? They somehow metamorphosed and come back as new companies. So this is an immoral kind of engagement that the immoral government is involved in in so doing, it has exposed the citizens that it is meant to protect.
Wow, thank you. Monica, I can't imagine how dire this topic means to you. You're from Nile Girls. I don't know, seeing these videos, seeing these stories, where would you put the blame? Is it on the weak international laws? Because we know that we have bilateral agreements with these countries. Is it because there are weak international laws? Is it because sovereign states are protected by the principle of extraterritorial jurisdiction, that Uganda cannot go and enforce laws in Saudi Arabia, in Oman, because of the principle of extra-constitutional jurisdiction. So where is the problem? Is it because there's lack of opportunities within the country? But also we are in a global village, so I should be able to work anywhere that I want. So where is the in-between?
Thank you. One thing I would love to note is that, for Uganda, the kind of country that we are, when it comes to those laws between the two countries, you'd very well know that, there is that aspect of a superpower, I would say, because it would actually be very hard for Uganda to challenge, for example, the UAE, because of the very many things, for example, that we also get to benefit from as a country, just based on that partnership. But also, one thing I think mainly, when you talk about the labor export, it's actually affecting the young women. That is why I would agree that it's a very pertinent issue to me. But one thing I would love to note is that, one, we as young people, we have this ideology that, you can get rich in one day. And we also have that perspective that it is good all out there, So most times you'd find these young women are actually going for what they would say greener pastures. But also to note is that, one, our education system trains us to be more of job seekers than creators. So you'd find, one, we're already noting that these young women who are actually going to these UAE countries, one, they are not experienced enough, and some of them have actually not attained that level of education that is desirable for them to have a decent job. So one thing is that the education system alone, it creates a very big challenge, because it is creating creating that mindset for you to work for someone else. It's not every day that you would find a Ugandan, as much as they say we have the highest entrepreneurial rates, but we also have the highest failure rates. So you'd find, out of that frustration of, one, the quality of education in the country, but also how practical is this system. So you'd find, one, this is a young person who is desperate. They need basic, let me say, food, shelter, and all these things. So one, the first thing they would think is that if I'm to go to another country, I would actually get this better. But one thing I think also we really need to work on as a government is, one, to regulate because by the time you're seeing these young women are at the airport, if you're to go to the airport right now, you'll see very many of them. One is that, who is actually behind this? Because I also believe there are people who have made this as business, Are we actually regulating these bodies that export the labor? Because you'd find really young people at the airport going out there. So one is, let's actually regulate what happens within our country, because if we are talking of the porous borders, who is actually creating that porous border? Are we now neglecting and saying, you're 18, you know what you want, you can go? As much as we are talking about all these other laws into place, how about we actually put effort on this? Because you'd find some of these girls giving testimony saying, a friend of mine connected me to this company and they promised. But even as in the communities, are we actually having conversations, or we only want to talk about other issues that we feel like are more important? Because there are some people who would say, this thing of girls going out of the country to UAE, who doesn't know that the UAE has all these issues around? But you'd find that these are people who actually, first, they're even not informed, because Peace, who is in sound mind, would not go to the airport, board a plane, knowing that, one, I don't even have the job security. So one thing is that we should create more opportunities, but also not just, let's say, government creating the opportunities. We should sensitize young people about being more of job creators. And, for people, most times they would think having a job is wearing a suit, sitting in an office, swinging around. You can create a decent job where even you find someone in the market is much better than someone who has gone to the UAE. So one, I think the issues are, one, around the laws that are really not so much being implemented and also being followed up, but also sensitization and encouraging people to actually come up with initiatives that can be supported. But sometimes, the frustration comes because of the taxes that are imposed so much on local ownership of, let me say, initiatives of young people. So like there's a whole list of requirements a young person needs. So you'd find out of that frustration, they would definitely prefer, they would rather, someone said, I would rather cry with a broken heart in Dubai than in a slum in Kampala.
Thank you. Thank you. Ivan, I'm one of those who believe that young people should be part of the country's solution. Assuming you are to advise on how best to create more opportunities for employment in the country, how would you advise government to go around with creating more opportunities in Uganda?
Yes, thank you very much, the moderator. First, I want to also echo on the cause. What caused Uganda to be in a state of exporting informal labor, not formal but informal labor? The Philippines is one of the best exporters of maids and labor across the world. For our Ugandan's case, we look to have entered the business without doing enough of the research and investment. But what were the causes? Because we want to believe exporting labor was not bad, but where did we go wrong? I want first to believe that there were failures within internally. People chose to go for the labor not because it was their wish, but it was because of the hardship, because of the uncertainty. You can, where me and Nimrod come from, especially in every 10 homes, there are 5 homes with kids who have gone to either Oman, Saudi Arabia, or Jordan. Because UAE has always been these ones around Central, or Jordan. In every 10 homes, there are 5 homes with a kid. This is a community where agriculture is no longer that productive. The coffee business has remained to the few because the schools, we began in a UPE school in my class of around 300. How many of us reached university? Making it double figures is impossible. Parents themselves doing their responsibility of parenting degenerated. If it never disappeared, then it degenerated. When it comes to the government side, any government needed to have a plan about its population. As Uganda, we need to always, as good, we are on a youth round table. What is our plan? We have a National Youth Council in place. How often is it addressing such challenges? We have leadership structures up to the village for youth. How best do they address challenges of the youth? Is why I told you in the beginning that communication in leadership is key. We have a government that is deaf but sees. We always see the post-mortem that this and this is happening, but where does it get feedback? That, oh, does it have a vision in a plan that by this and this we need to accommodate such a number? All the causes, majority, came from the kind of education we were marketing as a country. That we, as we have been always known for copying, and we tried to sell the white collar education too much over the hands-on, over the technical, over what we were known for, like the agriculture. We made it look for the poor. Growing coffee was for the rich in 60s in our region. Today, people have just realized after they have sold their land or they have given up and bought borders or to begin chapati stalls, that coffee can now sell a kg 11,000 plus. So the cause came with the governance. You will never run away from governance once you're in charge. The root cause of all this is governance, which he has to take account and tell his leaders that on issues of the youth, we need to review our policy, we need to review our benchmarking, we need to review our manifesto. in addressing some of these deficiencies.
Ivan,
Because governance is a
Ivan,
key disease when
why
it
are you
comes.
being lenient? I think
Ah.
you just tell Mzee that he should go. He has been reviewing for 40 years. What is there to
Yeah,
review?
even by today, you can save a soul who is going to die today evening if you deliver that message early. You can save someone. So that is key. Governance came as an issue. But the sole solution, even if we propose that maybe we change the education, some of this, like in our villages, completely don't step in school. They are already pregnant at the age of 15. They see it as hope. They see going to the UAE is better than suffering and dying in Uganda in uncertain. Some are running away from crime as impregnated someone, and going to the UAE is better than a prison. So I think from the Uganda's perspective, especially the Ministry of Gender, it needed to review itself.
As you conclude, eh?
Yeah, you need to review on first the licensing. Because we have companies which have gone, everyone now has a company, even in villages. Second, apart from licensing, how best have you put these local leaders or local councils, grassroots structures, to have a stake in this licensing of companies, to have a stake and monitor, to also have annual reports on the performance, to have annual reports on the enrollment, to have annual reports at embassies, to have annual reports at we are entering into an East African community. If someone is using the Kenya border, should we say it should be closed when our agenda is East African community? How best are you working with Kenya to say that you get information when it regards to such issues?
Thank you. Colleagues, our time is fast spent, but I know that it's prudent that I give you 30 seconds each, just to say your last words on this particular topic, then we shall wrap it up. I know most of you are politicians, but please, 30 seconds, maximum 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you, moderator. Mine is that the Ugandans, my fellow brothers and sisters, the young people out there who use illegal means to go to this country, it is not safe for you. The government, by today morning, has registered 340 companies to ensure that they can get you a good job in those countries. If you really want to go, please, there's a labor official at your district. Contact them. These companies advertise for these jobs. They are listed. Please verify this company that is taking you out there. Don't go into this illegal means and you suffer from there, and government cannot do it to help you. To the government, I also want to appreciate our embassy and the consulate in Dubai and embassy in UAE for negotiating for an amnesty of around 1,500 Ugandans who were there illegally, and now they're in the detention center. And by today, most of them are back here, free of charge. I want to thank them. But my government has said, let's publish more about these companies which are clearly registered to the Ugandans who are seek to go and look for jobs in these countries. Thank you.
Yes, Harris, your last words. Nimrod has set a very good precedent.
Yeah,
1 minute.
to fellow Ugandans, especially the young, the Chaguran generation, the generation of very talented people. I have a lot of belief in you. I believe in you a lot, in your talent, in your skill, your commitment, and your resolve to develop your own country. I want to promise you that together we can build our own economy here, we can develop our own companies here, and we can employ our young people, we can employ our Ugandans here in decent jobs. But we cannot do that unless and until we have a government that cares. So we must make sure that we fight so hard to establish a government for the people, by the people, that cares for Ugandans. For those that have contributed to the repatriation of our dying Ugandans, living in indignation, fear, and want, we want to thank you very much. And I want to take this opportunity once again to call upon many other Ugandans, good-hearted Ugandans, to continue giving to this cause. While your government is asleep, while your government in Kololo, while your government in Mienga, wherever they be, while they sleep, as our sisters and brothers continue to suffer indignity in these countries, I call upon you, you Ugandans, you loving Ugandans, continue giving to the National Unity Platform, we expatriate every Ugandan and we bring them here to build a stronger nation for God and my country.
Yes, Ivan.
He has mentioned a lot. Mine is to the government. Let's have a plan towards the youth. Let's go into alternative ventures like involving the youth more in issues like sports, issues like value addition to the agricultural sector, issues of ICT, issues of governance, issues of involving the youth in issues of productivity and good governance, so that the youth don't see the alternative of traveling to United Arab Emirates as a better alternative to their country. Let's see issues of wages when it comes to workers, issues of good laborers within the country. To our policymakers, let's rise and save our children because the future of Uganda lies within the youth and the younger generations to come. Let's review our education system early enough, not rely on visions like the Visions 2040 and other issues, but let's review our history as Ugandans. We had issues and we had departments that we were good at, like the 3Cs, which we were better than going into adapting a lot of issues that we have failed to manage and compete globally. And so mine is a request to my fellow sisters and brothers who have the mindset to reach anyone planning to travel abroad. Let this person pass through the right channels. Let this person consult and reach the respective offices. And to those working in immigration and internal affairs, be helpful and avoid corruption, because I know even when we talk and you remain corrupt, we solve nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Monica, you have the last words.
Thank you. Just to conclude, I would love to call upon the government to bring in more tax incentives for young people's initiatives, because oftentimes it's as a result of frustration that you see young people looking for greener pastures elsewhere. But also for the education system, we can't emphasize this much more. The education system has for a long time encouraged people to be job seekers more than creators. But also, lastly, I call upon the parents and every other person within households, heads of families, and anyone, you know, with young people in their communities, that to interest themselves in conversations with these young people, to know what their plans are, because you'd find some of these young people actually leave the country without guidance from people would call parents or even the guardians, and also to be able to advise them on what routes they can take in order to actually be more productive in Uganda. And I would also love to appreciate everyone who has put an effort to expatriate these young people to get back into Uganda, and so that they have a decent life. But also for the other people that are hoping to move out to go to UAE or to any other countries to do work, please make research and consult people. Don't hold it to yourself in the name of, you know, no one needs to know my move, because that could be what would save you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much, Comrade Harris, Comrade Ivan, Comrade Monica, and Comrade Nimrod for spending the time to be on our show. Thank you to our producers for ensuring that this show airs right on time. Well, what more can I say except thank you, our viewers, for joining us this afternoon, and see you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.